Welcome everybody to I'll Be Right Back, the show where we take a look at a horror movie. Could be old, could be new, could be good, could be bad. And since it's Friday the 13th, Peter, I think there's no better way to celebrate than by looking at what some people would argue is one of the most important horror movies ever made, even if it is kind of bad.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I watched this because I remember watching it at the time. I sat and I made my wife watch it, and it's all right. It's not what I was expecting, if I'm honest. My wife kept saying to us, are you reviewing this like you're reviewing it watching it now, or you're reviewing it like you watched it back then? Because this is a 40-odd-year-old movie, and by God, I think I got about 20 minutes, 30 minutes in, and I thought, this is going to be a disaster. But I think it picks its pace up and it gets much, much better later on in the movie.
There's definitely an injection of energies, particularly in the last 15 minutes or so, but it's a slow burn. So just a little bit of history about the kind of creation of this movie. It's directed by Sean S. Cunningham. So he had previously worked in horror on Last House of the Left with Wes Craven. The success of Halloween kind of spurred this, so they very much saw horror movies are kind of hitting it big now. Let's do exactly that. Just tweak it a little bit so we don't get sued. They placed an ad for this movie before they even had a story written of Friday the 13th smashing through the glass. It was just a poster that said the most terrifying movie ever made, and they didn't even have a script.
What a weird start that was to the movie. I mean, again, I was talking to my wife, I said, was this when 3D was just coming out? Because it felt
No, that's
weird.
the third movie, Peter.
I know,
we might get to that one eventually.
Jesus, I hope. This felt totally weird, the Friday the 13th kind of smashing through the glass thing. It was odd. It was odd.
So we have this kind of opening kill. You see these camp counselors, the 50s, very kind of classic setup. And then you have two very tame murders. Now that I believe was done on purpose to make it more shocking later on when the kills get a bit more gory. But you have this camp counselor, the girl particularly, who just sort of dances around. Everything feels very staged throughout this movie. I think part of that is, yeah.
Possibly. The word you're looking for is crap.
Part of that, I think, is because they got Broadway actors, so everything kind of does feel like it's up on a stage. All of the kind of counselor kids in this, they're just fumbling idiots. Anytime anyone's doing anything, it just doesn't look right.
I mean, one of my big criticisms, particularly at the start, in the first half of a movie, is that the acting is absolutely atrocious. I mean, it's some of the worst acting. And you're right, that first kill, it was like I was watching an episode of Columbo or Murder, She Wrote, totally over the top, kind of, and then it ended without any graphicness at all. It was just, I remember seeing that bit and thinking, wow, this is going to be awful.
I will say, I think that all the characters have a certain likability to them. I like Kevin Bacon's character. I think, the kind of horned up guy with the girlfriend, I thought they were fun. I really like Annie, who was the hitchhiking girl that you meet at the beginning. She's so gee willikers, I'm going to go have a great time. And then I think it was kind of cruel the way she just got offed. She didn't even make it to the camp.
So we're going to disagree straight away, because I could if I had seen her hitchhike, no, I can't say that, can I? I was going to say I would kill her myself. She got right on my nerves. I thought she was awful. I got a surprise she got offed so quickly, mind. And one of the things I did notice about this, and yes, it's a product of the time, and I get that, but dear God, did that really kind of over-sexualize the women, and it felt uncomfortable. The start with the, gee whiz, I hope all the counselors are as pretty as you. I'm literally cupping her backside when he helped her into the van. It just really felt weird.
Different times, man. Sean S. Cunningham, I don't know if you're aware, it was a porn director prior to this. We're going to work in
that makes sense.
Softcore porn. Lots of horror directors did. I believe Wes Craven did as well. So yeah, and that's become sort of a staple of the franchise, over sexualization and the skimpy outfits, and a lot of people kind of inject the whole virgins survive kind of trope. I quite liked Annie. I thought she was fun. We have this kind of POV shots, very Halloween inspired, I think, a little bit of Jaws maybe as well, where she gets into the truck and she jumps out of it and does a somersault herself. They didn't have stunt actors really on this film. That was her, that actress, who doesn't even have her own Wikipedia. That car is going so fast. I don't know how she didn't break her neck.
Yeah, she takes quite the tumble, doesn't she?
Alice is kind of the protagonist of this film, the kind of tomboy artist girl, played by Adrienne King. I absolutely love her. I think she's one of the strongest final girls in horror movie history.
Yeah, I quite liked her as well. She was one of the, well, I'm saying one of the most likable. I liked all of the counsellors, to be honest. I don't think there was any of them that really, the comedy element, the young lad who was cracking jokes and all that kind of stuff, he got on my nerves a little bit. I was pleased when he died.
Yeah, well, we didn't even get to see it on screen, though.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Yeah.
The kills in this movie, Tom Savini, he got brought into this for his work on Dawn of the Dead, and he's kind of grown into a very famous special effects artist. I think at the time they were incredible, and there are some that make you wince. Probably the most famous kill in this movie is Kevin Bacon, the arrow through the the throat, where the blood is just spewing out of it. I believe this wasn't a problem at the time. It's you only notice it now as this movie has gotten kind of remastered in HD, that there's like a color disconnect between the prosthetics and the faces, and you really notice that anytime a throat is slit or the Kevin Bacon one just looks a bit off.
Yeah, I did notice that watching it because of the way the movie started, and then I think we had 2 or 3 killed in succession, all with a slashed throat. I really thought, oh, is this going to be it? Is this the excitement of the kills? And then we got the arrow through the throat, which I thought, even though you do see the colour distillation, it was a great death. I loved that. But the one that really threw me was the axe through the head. That looked as good as you would see in horror movies these days. I think it was pretty horrific.
Sort of a shame that we didn't get to see like the actual impact.
But you know what, James? I get that. And it would have been pretty grotesque, I suppose, for the axe to hit and you to see it. Both me and my wife got a shock when it kind of, you saw that swing, it cut, and then you saw the head with the axe in it. That was probably more of a jump scare. I did get a bit of a kind of moment, you know? Yeah, I like that. And the guy with the arrows pinned to the door was very good as well.
Yeah, well, like onto the kind of the scares, that was a particularly effective one. Like I love that. The door closes over and there he is. Just a big shock. I'm a big fan of the pan up. I know like we didn't get to see the kill on screen, but I love the kind of camera work of Kevin Bacon and the girl kissing on the bed, and then it pans up and there's the dead body, and just the way that kind of sequence plays out with the blood dripping on his face, I thought was absolutely fantastic.
I thought this movie was really good in terms of not being afraid to build the tension and the suspense. So there were a number of scenes, and the one that comes to mind most for us, where it just kind of plays on and on and on, and you're waiting for something to happen. Like the scene in the lodge where she's making a cup of tea. She literally makes a cup of tea. Nothing happens. Do you know what I mean? But it's like all that time I was feeling anxious, waiting for something to jump through the window or someone to come out, and it absolutely didn't. She walks out. I think it's quite brave for it to spend so much time just letting those shots linger and letting that tension build.
Well, it didn't work for me. I thought it was too much. We don't need 90 seconds of somebody making a pot of coffee and looking stressed and then deciding to...
I forgot. I do apologise. I forgot it's America. It was bound to be a pot of coffee rather than a cup of tea, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
You're right.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a few kind of like, as I said earlier, like the staging of the movie I find kind of weird. There's like a few moments I found odd, like there's a bit where Alice is hammering nails into she's going up and down a ladder, and she literally hammers 2 nails, gets down, moves the ladder like an inch over, and then gets up and has one last nail. And I'm like, would you not have just done it while you were up there? Surely you could have reached.
I don't know how much direction they got. There seems to me a lot of just crack on. Do you know what I mean? In this scene, you're doing something with a hammer, crack on and do it. I don't know that it was well thought out at times, if that makes sense. It felt kind of a bit all over the place. Crazy Ralph should have died. I mean, I'm just going to say it. Crazy Ralph was crazy. I was expecting to find him dead at some point. But again, I think this movie is very good at setting you up for... I wish I'd seen this film at the time. Put it that way. So my wife is totally blasé to this, so she didn't know the big reveal at the end. I think the movie is superb at planting loads of characters and moving people around, so you're constantly trying to figure out, hang on, who's doing this? Is it the guy in the car that's drove off? Oh no, he's at a diner. Is it Crazy Ralph? Oh no, he's disappeared on his bike or whatever. Is it one of the counsellors? At the time, I would imagine that would have been a real good experience for the cinema goers, not knowing what the big outcome is.
The movie clearly wants you to think it's Crazy Ralph, and you see in the POV shots, like, it's clearly a man. Like, you know, there's, even if you pause, he's in a brown shirt, big manly hands. Like, there's no way that's...
I mean, I think that lady was obviously either some kind of, you know, Russian shot putter or something, because she has bare hands. But the reveal at the end is tremendous. If you haven't seen the movies or know the lore behind it, you know? I think back in the day, in the 80s, that would have been a great twist.
I think it's iconic now, but looking at this movie from a modern perspective, there was ways you could have implemented this better. Obviously, Betsy Palmer comes in as Mrs. Voorhees towards the end of the movie. Absolutely, she's doing Shakespeare compared to everybody else. She's just absolutely incredible. It's such an unhinged performance. Like, I absolutely love it. And like, the only reason she's even in this movie is because her car broke down like a week before she was offered it, and she needed to replace it. And she's like, horror movie, no, but I need the money. Lucky break that the movie even got her. But I feel like it's so out of left field. There's multiple characters that don't need to be in this movie. There's multiple scenes where there's other characters where you could have planted her in there. So for example, the diner scene at the beginning, why wasn't she in that scene? There she is. The movie treats it like a mystery, a whodunit, but we're not really presented a list of suspects. Like, there's a cop that shows up 20-30 minutes in, he just comes and goes, disappears. That could have been her. She could have come up, hey, oh, you're opening the camp again, you know, present suspects and give us people to be suspicious of.
Yeah, but I guess at the very start they do say very nonchalant, oh, you know, there was a kid drowned there the year before, so they plant that seed, don't they, that there's been something else happen. But you're right, and it would have been interesting to have perhaps us not see who she is, but to have characters interacting with her, talking to her, and you're seeing through her eyes, I suppose, to again just plant that seed that the killer's known to them.
I suppose you get a little bit of that, like in the opening, where they're like, oh, we're just messing around, or the bit where Annie gets in the truck and she's like, oh, hey, and talking to her about life and stuff. But yeah, I think that could have been implemented a bit better. You'd have just, if you seeded that throughout the movie, and like I kind of had a Mandela effect maybe. I thought she was earlier in the film introduced, and it was the twist, oh, it was her all along, but no, she just shows up out of nowhere. I will say, I really like how they telegraph that it's her based on the car. You see the car that Annie got in at the beginning, she's driving that, so I really like that foreshadowing there. I thought that was great.
She can move for an older lady as well, can't she? Because she chucks that body through the window and then runs around, gets in a car, reverses, then drives back.
I mean, she's hanging them by the rafters and everything. She's like putting them in display for them to conveniently fall down and scare people.
Well thought out.
Yeah. Good fight scene at the end as well. I quite like there. Again, the staging, the shuffling around and stuff, but I'm just like, yeah, go Alice.
But it's pretty brutal, isn't it? It is pretty brutal.
Yeah, they're biting each other and swinging axes and everything, yeah. So the ending, and one of the best effects I think in the movie is when her head gets lopped off. It's just spurting blood and her hands are like clenching. Oh, it's gross. Loved it.
Yeah, hands are trying to grab a missing head, don't they? Yeah, I thought that was tremendous.
Probably one of the best jump scares in any movie of all time, I think. Jason jumping out of the water and grabbing Alice. I still think that's scary now. Like, even when you know it's coming, the music and everything, the kind of calm serenity of it, and then bam, there it is.
But it felt totally unnecessary. It felt like a different film. Do you know what I mean? And I know, and like I say, it's a long time since I've seen this film, so I thought that was literally how the movie ended, with her being pulled into the water. I didn't realise, or I didn't remember, that there was a hospital scene at the end where it kind of does the get out clause of, was it in her mind, was it a dream, and then she does that kind of, but the boy's still there kind of thing. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Do I think it necessarily needed it? I don't know, because up till this point, the film had been very much grounded in reality, as far as these films can be. It was a crazy woman with a knife and an axe killing people. And then all of a sudden, at the very end, you've got this twist of a supernatural kind of element, which came out of left field. If you weren't aware of the Jason kind of mythology afterwards, I guess, if you're watching it at the time, it might have felt a bit strange.
In the script, originally, the movie did end with her just on the lake, on the boat. And Victor Miller actually dislikes that they brought Jason back at all, but basically they wanted a Carrie moment, like a big shock at the end of the movie to kind of have people talking when they got out, and I think they created quite an effective one. The score, Harry Manfredini, very kind of Jaws-esque. Obviously the
That was very well done. Well done, I like that. I guess all I would say about that is such an iconic tune. God, is it overused, mind. It's pretty much constant. It takes away some of the impact for me. I kind of, again, Mandela effect, in my head, had that as kind of Jason's theme tune when he's about to do a murder or something like that. But it's pretty much evident throughout the entire movie. A lot at the start as well. It kind of lost its impact a little bit for me, I think.
That's fair. But even outside of the main themes, a lot of creepy strings and cellos and stuff. So a little bit of trivia about this movie, Peter. Some of this is from IMDb, some of this is from Crystal Lake Memories, which is the Friday the 13th documentary that I watched prior to doing this, because I put the effort in, you know.
Oh, it's very good, very good. I didn't, James.
No,
I watched
you show up and get paid, that's it.
Yeah. Let's go get paid. Oh, marvellous.
We'll see. The snake killed by the counselors was real.
You could tell that, and again, that was a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, it gets worse. It was a performance snake that Tom Savini borrowed. It wasn't even in the script. He just had the idea for the scene, borrowed it. The owner didn't know that they were going to kill it.
Wow.
So they just murdered someone's pet snake.
And I mean, that's crackers. And again, going back to the whole cheesiness at times of the movie, that is the most ridiculous scene ever. I mean, they literally all see this snake. So then the next thing you know, they're all jumping on top of each other, climbing under the bed to try and look at it. That's a snake. I'm out the friggin' door. I'm not jumping.
Big black one as well, wasn't it? Yeah, scary looking thing.
You could tell it was a real snake when they chopped it up. It was pretty horrific, actually.
Yeah, it was nasty. Following the film's success, Aging King was stalked by an obsessed fan. Terrified, she asked that her role in part 2 be as small as possible, and she didn't take any other roles or make convention appearances for almost 20 years after its release.
Wow, that's pretty tragic in itself, isn't it? That's horrible.
I think she is like a strong point in this movie, and she probably would have had a very successful career after this had that not been the case. So it's really unfortunate. And lastly, grossing just under $60 million, the movie was the 18th highest grossing film of 1980, beating out fellow horror classics like The Shining, The Fog, and Prom Night. Any kind of final thoughts to say about this movie?
Rough start for me, but it quickly picks up pace. I think the counsellors all play good parts. I thought some of the kills were really quite inventive. You know, in terms of the special effects, some of them struggle watching them now on today's standards, you know. I started off this show by saying it was a bit bad, but actually it's not bad. It was enjoyable for what it is, I think. I'm glad we watched it, put it that way.
I think if it wasn't for having a great name, a great marketing campaign, and looking out with Betsy Palmer, this movie probably would have fallen into obscurity. Horror sequels weren't really a thing. Horror franchises, like outside of like the Universal monsters, weren't really a thing back then. So yeah, I think this would have been a one and done. It very much looked out. So that's I'll Be Right Back on Friday the 13th. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out the channel where we do one good scare live every second Friday. And we'll be right back next time with...
Never, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.